right. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So everybody's falling in now, joining the call. We'll give everybody a minute or two to hop on, and then we'll get going. I'm excited about today's content, and Deb, you're on with us today. Where are you again? Where are you based out of today?
I'm in Port Orange, Florida, which is just south of Daytona Beach. I'm about 2 miles away from the actual beach.
Nice. Yeah, the upper East Coast
Yes.
is
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, the farther south you go, it gets busier and busier and busier.
Busier and busier. It's like, oh, yes. Yeah. And
Yeah, yeah.
I'm right north of New Smyrna Beach, which is the shark bite capital of the world.
That's right. There's a fun fact and a good
Fun
reason not
fact.
to get into the water.
I have to tell you, it's my favorite place to swim. I love to go body surfing, and I that's where I go to do it. So I
Well,
have yet to
apparently the
see.
sharks do too.
Yeah.
So,
I've never seen one or gotten bitten by one. I might have come close. I don't know, but I still go. I pretty much go almost every weekend. So
oh man.
I know
Yeah,
about
I grew up in Florida and have a tremendous respect and fear of sharks. Tough to get me in the water. I've been bumped by some big things
oh,
before, and
really?
it is just, yeah, not my jam for
Now, where in
sure.
Florida did you grow up?
I spent half of my time over on the West Coast, outside of Clearwater, and then the other half outside West Palm Beach, Lake Worth area.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, because we have a house in
yeah.
Marco Island too, so we go there a lot too. That's on the West Coast, just south of
Yes.
Naples,
Yep, yep,
and
yeah. Beautiful area down there.
yep, it's pretty there. That's my husband's side of the state. I like the ocean side of the state.
Oh,
So,
you like being battered by
oh
waves, and he
yeah,
likes the
the
smooth
waves.
glass of the Gulf.
Oh yeah, he likes the smooth. Well, when I was young, my mom and dad would take us to the Jersey Shore, Beach Haven,
Hmm.
every summer for 2 weeks. It was my most. I look forward to that every year. So when I was little, I said one day I'm going to live at the beach. And we came to Florida when I was 18 at Christmas time,
Yeah.
and I thought, oh my gosh, they're walking around in shorts in December. I'm going to move to Florida. So when I turned 21, I bought a car and I moved. My mom says, "Where are you going?" I go, "I'm going south. I'm going to live in Florida." So I stopped in Orlando, and every weekend I would drive over to New Smyrna Beach
There
and
you go.
go swimming.
There you go. Well, we'll get started. We're here today to talk about how much hackers love accountants, and we've got some fun stories. Well, not so fun stories to share. We've got some actionable tips that we're going to be able to share, and we'll get going here. So let's see. I'm Sam. Usually, if you've joined us before, you've got my partner in crime, Mandy. She was not able to join us today. However, if you want to learn any more, Mandy or I will be the ones that you're talking with. So we did keep her on the slide. And for those of you that have been on before, you have probably heard Mandy talking about a similar dream as Deb's, which is to have a house on the beach. That is her. It's on her dream board. That's the thing that's going to happen. But today, our special guest is Debra. We're excited to have Deb. Deb went from growing up in an accounting household to running a super modern and client-focused bookkeeping business, and I'm glad to have her with us today. Deb, you're going to share some stories, I know, and we're just going to have a conversation about the importance of cybersecurity, setting standards, being aware, and building that culture of security, as well as leveraging modern tools to protect against modern threats. Anything you want to share about yourself and your background that?
No, I just feel like I've been doing this since the day I was born. My dad was an accountant and became a business manager. And instead of like playing sports or throwing a ball with me when I was a kid, my dad would take me in the basement in Pennsylvania and teach me how to do taxes. So I've done this forever, you know. So I've always done it. And then my mom though told me, she said that girls were too still, didn't have the brains to do math. So I believed my
Right.
mom. And but then I wanted
Glad
to
you
be with my
came
dad.
to your senses.
Yeah. So when I decided to go to college, I went to college for 3 years in Pennsylvania until I discovered Florida. And I walked into UCF and said, "What's the major that will get me a job?" And they said, "Accounting." And I said, "Sign me up." So that's how I started. That's how I
Yeah.
became, because my mom wasn't around anymore to tell me what I couldn't do.
You
So
know, and it's so interesting. I've seen so many times that it has been a family business. In fact, a good friend of mine is the CFO of a country club down in Florida, and two of his sons are actually going into accounting. So they're going to the same college that he's an alum of. So it's really interesting that they're following in those footsteps. They see the
great
opportunity that,
profession. I tell you what,
yeah,
I love being an accountant. We get to help
yeah,
people, we get to transform lives. You
yeah.
know, I just think it's a fabulous job. So I'm
And
still
what's
working my ripe old age. And so is my husband. He's 78, and I just saw a client just left. So he's still he's still plugging
yeah.
away.
Yeah, there's longevity in it. And what's really interesting is the shift that's taking place. You've seen a number of shifts over the years, and you've taken time to really define your ideal client and to put some standards together and modernize your practice and the way that you approach the relationships. And what we're seeing now in the industry is a huge shift in almost this responsibility that accountants and bookkeepers have to talk about cybersecurity with their clients as well. I mean, we all know that accountants and bookkeepers need to keep financial data safe, but there's that there's that next step, which is, you know, you're out there helping your clients with their financial security and their business planning and making sure they're making smart decisions. But now it's a question of, okay, well, how are we going to make sure that they have some resiliency in their business on the cybersecurity front as well, because it's not just our responsibility to keep their data safe. They also have to have an active role in that. It's no longer a matter of if, but when. And I know we've got some different stories that we're going to be sharing about some real world situations. So um, we're going to keep the focus at first on accountants. We'll probably talk a little about what accountants can do for clients. Talk about some standards that can be put in place in terms of security and how that might differentiate you from others that could be vying for that same business. We will talk about cybersecurity awareness and some technology that can be put in place to heighten that, and building that culture of cybersecurity, which is something that we talk a lot about on these series. We think that it really is critical that we do talk about, making it a cultural thing and making sure everyone's aware and sharing stories. So that's where we're at. So I guess let's start. Let's kick it off with why the heck are accounting firms such good targets, Deb?
Well, as Willie Sutton, the bank robber, said, it's where the money is.
It
So as
is.
accountants, we have social security numbers, bank account numbers, we have it all. So we are the repository of a lot of the data. So not if they came to us, they would get our client list with all of their information versus going to a client, they'd only get their information. So accountants, it's like, boy, we're the bank. So if Willie Sutton was around, he'd be coming to rob us. So that's why we're such prime targets for hacking.
Yeah.
You want to
Yeah.
get our books.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is that it took the FTC a really long time to define accountants as financial institutions and ask them to adhere to the safeguard rules. That was a evolution just a couple of years ago, and when it happened, I think all of us in the cybersecurity space sort of scratched our heads and said, wait a minute, we're just now saying that accountants should probably put some focus on cybersecurity. That's crazy. So yeah, it's been a wild couple of years with the regulatory changes, with the refocusing on cybersecurity strategies, and we've seen a ton of really helpful and useful documentation come from the IRS and the FTC, depending on which side you're on. So yeah, that definition of financial institution saying that you hold PII on at least what is it, 500 or 5,000 individuals? Might be 5,000. But you hit that number really quickly if you have clients that you've done payroll for. So that threshold can be really quick to pass. And the thing that I think is really important to drive home is that the FTC's safeguard rule is really just best practice. I mean, we're not talking about putting unreasonable security in place. It's really about reasonable security for reasonable risk. So understanding where your vulnerabilities are, understanding where all the data is, understanding who has access to it, and managing that, and putting some technology in place to be proactive and be modern enough to do that active threat hunting that we're going to talk about some more as well.
And most people think my
So you're
firm is
right.
too small, I don't have to worry about it. No, even the smallest firm. And the other thing too, you were talking earlier about differentiation.
Yeah.
When we get new
Hmm.
clients in, we really stress how we're very, concerned about their security. And a lot of times clients might say, well, I'm thinking about going to the guy down the street. I say, well, ask to see their WISP plan. Here's ours.
Exactly.
They're like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Not that they might not have one, but clients have never heard of it. So if you start talking about that and
Right.
how you really put a premium on it, you will differentiate yourself from another accounting firm possibly, who also might put it in, but they're not talking about it. So we like to emphasize
Sure.
that in our firm.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to market that you have policies. That written information security plan, that WISP that you mentioned is a requirement, and it's so critical. And I love it because it's an exercise that helps you identify your gaps. The entire WISP process really starts with a gap analysis. It's a checklist. Accountants love checklists, so you get
We
to
do.
go through it and say, "Yep, I've got this. No, I don't have that." And then deciding, okay, is that a risk that's acceptable to me, or is that a risk that is not acceptable, that absolutely has to be remediated? And that's where partnering comes in often, making sure that we've got people that live and breathe this every day and are up to speed on the latest trends. Um, let's see, we've got our first question in the Q&A. We didn't go over any housekeeping. Yeah, please feel free to use the Q&A. We'll probably answer them live unless it makes sense to hold them till the end. So we'll take this one, Deb. This one's with remote and hybrid work becoming the norm. How can firms secure access to financial systems from outside of the office? And I can take it unless you've got some ideas that you want
You
to.
go ahead and I'll tell you what I do if I have anything to add.
Yeah, so the FTC is super clear on remote work, which is great. They highly recommend that you have a secure VPN in place, and VPNs come in all shapes and sizes. We never recommend the freebies. They are not as secure. There are some next gen tools that actually give you a virtual firewall, so a cloud-based firewall. So it's just like if you were in the office, you're able to govern internet access. So all of your work traffic flows through that secure encrypted connection. You can put rules in place, or your provider can put rules in place to block known malicious sites by default. So, just saying, okay, we know these are bad. Let's just block them because there's no reason for anyone to have access. And also blocking some other traffic that's non-productive, gambling sites, for example. So having that secure VPN, but especially having a gateway-based sort of virtual firewall is one of the really great ways, especially if we're dealing with the bring your own device type of situation where you've got people on personal devices. And we've got some other tactics that we'll talk about as we go through this hour.
Well, one of the things I do is the people that work for me, they get the computer I send them. They're not using their own computer. And
Hmm.
it's, because I can control that computer. I can't control it if they give it to their kid, to do whatever the kids do,
Right.
or their husband or spouse or whomever, So there is a cost, but to me, it's worth the cost because the risk of not having a cybersecurity, to getting hacked, you can lose your business. I mean, lose it. So to me, it's a small price to pay to have it, so if somebody gets hired, I send them the computer. It's mine. So it's locked down. They can only use that to access stuff, passwords, things like that. So if they get fired, shuts off. I can close it from wherever I am. If the computer gets, let's say they take it with them, and a lot of us do this, where we travel and we take our
Hmm.
laptop with us. We'll have it where you can turn it off. If someone steals it, you lose it, where it's not there for someone else to pick up and start using. So it does take a level of effort and knowledge, but that's why you have firms like Visory or to help you along that. Because to me, I don't want to learn all the details. I have enough learning tax codes and this new thing in QBO, whatever they've come up with. So I hire people to do it for me. I don't clean my own house, even though I know how to run a vacuum, so I'm willing to do, hire it done, you know, but it's important thing
Yeah,
to consider, especially when everybody's working remotely now. And then Joseph asked about
right.
cybersecurity insurance. You can add that to your policy. But people think if they have a cybersecurity insurance, no worries. You still have to mitigate any damages. So even though you have it, you still have to do all the steps as if you didn't have it. It's kind of like having driver, you know, auto insurance. You still have to drive safely and defensively. Just having insurance doesn't mean you'll never be in an accident. So,
Yeah, and most importantly on that is when you have a cyber liability policy, they often put very specific technology requirements into that policy that you have to adhere to. And across the board, we saw an instance where they weren't a client of ours, but they came to us after the fact, and they had a policy. They had a breach. The policy was denied. They denied the claim because while they attested that they had multi-factor authentication on, they didn't have it on everywhere, and the point of entry was a point that did not have multi-factor. So, when we're doing these attestations and we say, "Oh yeah, we use multi-factor authentication in our business," we have to be really careful and say, do we use multi-factor everywhere that we can use multi-factor? And if not, then that answer is no. Two of the other big ones that we've seen on basically every insurance renewal form over the last 2 years has been threat hunting. So advanced next generation antivirus that has this threat hunting agent rather than that traditional signature based antivirus that waited for the bad thing to happen and alerted you that it had happened. Now it's okay, do you have next gen, which is looking for behaviors that look consistent with bad activity that get blocked and quarantined and remediated. So that threat hunting has been on there. And the other one has been cybersecurity awareness training for the whole team. So those are the three that we consistently see on every single insurance form for our clients that they ask us to help them fill out.
that's great because that leads to Joseph's next question. Are there any particular red flags accounting firms should look for in email communications beyond standard phishing signs? Well, a lot of times, just use your common sense. I mean, I always you hover over the email address. Watch for, a lot of times they use different, for a three, they'll use something else. I think there's even a website you can copy the email and type it in there, and it will tell you if it's the letter's been changed to a different font, even it looks the
Hmm.
same. If the words look different, so always double check. I trust and verify, as Ronald Reagan used to say.
Yeah, and we're seeing another big shift, Deb. I don't know if you've seen this, but we're seeing a shift back to the old multi-factor authentication, which was picking up the phone and verifying. So just calling a number that you know is the number of that person and saying, "Hey, I got this email from you that's
Yes.
asking me to make this change to something we had talked about. Is this really what
Right.
you want done?"
And
Um,
that's a big one when if you do bill pay for clients,
oh yeah.
because or even if clients are doing bill pay. I had a client that they sent, they got a that please, we changed our banking address, please update the banking. And this client does, they do the interior design for all the hotels, like the Marriotts and the Hiltons and all that. So we're talking big dollars. So they actually sent they sent a vendor a payment for $90,000, and it was not the vendor.
Mm-hmm.
And they discovered it, and after the fact, they didn't get. I mean, they actually lost 90 grand. And the bookkeeper said it looked official to me. I said, well, did you call up and ask? No.
Yeah.
So now I said, anything over a certain amount or it looks weird, did you actually send me this email? Oh, my bank account changed, or please wire this, or whatever. Call them up and ask them, and tell your staff or your people, your team, come to you so you can call, or give them the authority to call. This just seems weird. I'm just double checking, and then
Yeah.
document it. I have another
Yeah.
friend, same thing. The email kept going in, and sure enough, she sent the payment out to the wrong place, um, but it looked legit, and so you have to watch. It's
Yeah.
everybody's a crook. I mean, I you have to almost take that attitude. And now I also find too they're texting. I
Yes.
got a text just yesterday from Apple.
Mm-hmm.
Apple that I made a purchase for $194. Click this text to verify it's you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, wait a minute. So I mean, and it would be so easy to do. Click the text, I thought, no, I know I didn't buy anything from Apple for $194 because banks do send verification. Every time I buy a 99-cent iTunes, my husband gets a text I spent 99 cents and he asks me about it. So they send texts, is this legit? So it looks real. And so I said, well, maybe something happened. Somebody maybe hacked my Apple account. So I actually logged into Apple outside of the text, and sure enough, nobody did. Um, but that happens a lot. Or Amazon, or I don't know, did you get this text that there's a package waiting for you? Or the one recently we're getting a lot of, you haven't paid your tolls.
Yep. Oh yeah, the toll scam's been going around for sure. Yeah. Yeah. So
Yep.
that's
So
the
then you go,
thing.
what do you mean I didn't pay my tolls? So you
Yes.
always be on the lookout for stuff that looks a little hinky, and educate your clients. 2FA is a big deal. I don't know, I had a client one time, he goes, I turned off 2FA for my QuickBooks Online. I go, don't you dare. And I read him the horror stories. I know it's a pain,
Yeah. Yep.
but what's a bigger pain is having someone steal all your money.
Yeah.
you know
For sure. So I think what you were touching on really, really plays to that next question in the Q&A, which is what's the role of leadership in this? And it's really defining policies as it relates to financial transactions. Accounts payable, accounts receivable, well, accounts payable policies and processes are really important, and that can be translated to client related activities, like you were talking about, Deb. Internally, we have an accounts payable process. There's certain approval tiers, and depending on the amount, it goes to a different person. And we had a $40,000 bill that came through our accounts payable department. It looked legitimate enough to them. It was someone that kept sending their invoice to us, and it had the W-9 attached. It was all filled out, and it said professional consulting services for, I don't know, team development or something. And it's not unusual for us to have consultants come in and do that kind of work. So everything looked okay to the person that pushed it through, and it happened to be right around Christmas time that this came through to our CEO, and he happened to have some time on his hands because it's a slow time of the year. And while he didn't always look at every single invoice that he was approving and its detail, he happened to on that day. And he said, wait a minute, I don't know this person. Is this someone that we hired? And he started reaching out and looking around. Then he looked at the thread a little farther and saw some red flags in the email chain. And it was, yeah, it was caught. We manually caught that, but we wouldn't have if the process had failed, if he hadn't actually inspected the invoices that he was approving, and if that AP process hadn't been put in place, because like I said, it looked legitimate. So
right.
by all rights, our AP department might have been like, all right, here you go. Thanks for your consulting services.
I know I had a client that used Bill, who multiple levels. We had 3 levels of
Right.
approval, and they sold the business and they brought
Hmm.
in a new accounting firm, and they did not want to pay the fee for Bill. So they stopped it. I go, do you realize what you're losing? Sure
Mm,
enough, they got hacked. And I'm like, you were not willing to pay the Bill.com monthly fee because
yeah.
you didn't want to pay for the users to approve the bills. Consequently, when the bill came in and the accounts payable person, she just paid it. I mean, and I said
Yep.
to the new accounting, why do you think the firm became so valuable for you to buy? because we had these controls in place and you just came in and were so worried about the pennies, you stepped over the dollars. And
Hmm.
that's a big beef of mine with accounting accountants. They're, they want to save money wherever they can, but they save it in all the wrong places. So, spend the money on the multi-level approver, take the time for the 2FA, get a good IT firm, use Visory to keep track of this stuff, because the consequence of not doing it is so great that you will lose your business. Imagine losing everything you've worked so hard for because of somebody's honest mistake, because a hacker got in because you
I
weren't.
mean, most of the small business owners that I know have not budgeted for a cybersecurity attack, so
No,
they don't have 60 grand sitting around to pay a ransom.
right.
And yet they're also often the ones that are the most reluctant to put some baseline measures in place, to put some technology in place to protect the most vulnerable entry points. And so it's all too often that we see businesses go under as a result of those kinds of breaches.
And one of the best, I mean, one of the worst is when, checks, a lot of times people will say, I said, well, Rich, on an accounts payable system, it's secure, blah, blah, blah. Well, I don't want to pay for it. I write a lot of checks. And I said,
Mhm.
on your checks is your name, where you bank, your routing number, your bank account number. Somebody can take your check, go down to Costco, copy
Right.
those checks, take a picture of your signature, and steal you blind. The most
Hmm.
unsecure thing you have are the checks that you write. And they don't even think about that because they don't want to pay. Well, I don't want to take a credit card or pay ACH because that costs money. I go, what's it cost if someone wrote a check and stole everything?
Right.
So because I had that happen. I went to a client and I say, what's this $9,000 check? Somebody copied a check, took $9,000 out. Now the bank covered it. We caught it
Yeah.
right away, because if you don't catch it fast enough from the small business guy, you lose. That's happened also. People come in, they don't want to pay for a service like ours. Had a client come in and he goes, I lost, like, I think it was like 12 grand or something, because people, hacked my account, and I went to the bank and they wouldn't cover it. I said, well, how long ago was it? Well, it was like 6 months ago. That's why. I mean, that's why you have somebody like us.
That's why you reconcile monthly.
Yeah, even I had a client another time, it was a bar, and I said, what's this check to the bartender for 5 grand? I called up the owner. I said, this check looks weird. And I said, did you pay the bartender $5,000? Like, no, I paid her 50. I said, well, she altered the check. Now that's not
Mm.
cybersecurity, but that's
Right.
still watching out and, for your clients and
Sure.
the money. So it just is so important. They come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. So
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
that Joseph asked too, what a role should firm leadership play? It's a role for everybody. Firm leadership sets the standard, but it's just not for them to be watching. It's everybody. Everybody on your team needs to understand about cybersecurity, the importance of it, how to follow through, how to do it, what to look for, have cybersecurity drills, trainings, every so often. You could even do it where you send out a fake email, have your kids send out a fake email and see how they respond, kind of a test.
Yeah, well, there's actually tools that do that. So regular simulations
Oh,
that
there you go.
measure that click prone percentage is what it's called. And then for the folks that click on the wrong things, it actually re-enrolls them in remedial training to make sure that they're constantly being exposed to the red flags so that they can be aware. So I think that going back to your point that firm leadership needs to set the standard.
Mhm.
What we've seen as well is the sharing of the policies. Make sure that your team knows what your cybersecurity and your use policies are so that they're adhering to those best practices as well. So keeping the focus on accounting firms, Deb, with the firm leaders that you know, are firms doing enough?
I think some of them say they are, they take it seriously, but saying and doing are two different things. Yeah, we take cybersecurity seriously, but they don't do anything about it. They still rely on old habits, like, sending tax documents through the email.
Yeah.
They don't have secure portals to use because, like, oh, the client thinks it's too hard to use. Too bad. I mean, if in our firm, if a client comes in, I don't care if they're 90 or 100 years old, that's just difficult to use. Well, the only way you're going to get the documents is to log into the portal. I will not risk my firm because you can't figure out how to click a button. And they get it. I mean, even doctors now require it, so they do know how. So but we rely on old habits. Some say, oh well, I was surviving. Now who wants my stuff? I'm too little. Uh-uh. You're the most
Right.
vulnerable because you
Yeah.
are little, and what will happen if someone hacks your stuff? You have to, of course, notify everybody, the lost trust that you have. I mean, it will really impact your business. And yeah, it all takes is one click. So I think you have to really, even the smallest firm, one man solopreneurs, need
Hmm.
to be extra vigilant. And I know we're all busy, all of us. Oh, this one thing, one time, I got to do this one step. But it's almost needs to be forefront of your mind. Every email that comes in, everything has to go through that secure portal. That's
Yeah.
where documents get shared. Everything with 2FA enacted. On the phone. It I know it's a challenge, but again, we talk about that with clients and tell them that's why we're good. People, when they understand how you're watching out for them, they'll go along with it and they'll actually then pay you more money because
Yeah.
you're better.
Yeah. Um, the we've seen several firms that have had a really strict policy and said, a lot like you, Deb, where you've really defined who your ideal client is. They've said that if a client doesn't want to do the things that we have established as our standards, they're not a fit for us.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think that's
I
a
mean,
really
I'm
important distinction.
I'm watching out for my firm, which is my livelihood, and the
Hmm.
people that work for me. It's also their livelihood.
Right.
So just because somebody wants to, not use the portal or it's too much trouble or you've heard all the
Oh
excuses.
yeah. Oh yeah.
I say, well, I'm not willing to risk my firm because you find it too hard. What's hard is if you don't do it and you get hacked.
Right.
If
Yeah.
you lost all your money, how would it have been too hard if you lost all your money? Well, I guess not. You know, it's like
Yeah.
going without, here I live in Florida. We have hurricanes. You want to run the risk of not having homeowners insurance, and have a you could lose your house,
Hmm.
so people have it. So it's, and then they watch to make, we have the shutters and all of that stuff. So the same thing with guarding your firms. You have to really protect put your own mask on first, as they say on the airplanes,
That's right.
and then make sure your clients come on. And if they don't, bye. I'm sure there are firms out there that don't take your security and your identity as seriously as we do. Try to get your identity hacked. Now you can't get a loan, you can't buy a car, credit cards are taken out in your name. I start making all these. I mean, you've heard all these stories about where, they lose their identity because somebody's charged up credit cards in their names and all that stuff. I said, that's what we're trying to, that's what we're preventing by putting these securities into place.
Yeah, and the analogy back to protecting the house, hurricane shutters. Hurricane shutters are not cheap. Now they come in different flavors, right? You've got the more affordable plywood option with the wing nuts that just sort of stick out there year round. You've got the next step up, which would be the metal panels that go onto those same wing nut type situations. And then you've got the really fancy rolling shutters that are just up there for you all year. You open the window, shut them, lock them. So you've got different tiers in cybersecurity
Remote
too.
control. How's wishing for the
Oh,
remote control kind? Zzz,
I didn't even know that there was a
yeah,
fourth
they
tier
just
at this
shut by
point.
themselves. Well, we have the
Yeah,
kind right now that you pull and you got to lock them,
yeah,
with the hand. But one of our neighbors in one of the condos has the remote control. That guy has the remote control shutters. I
that's
go,
it.
well, your birthday's coming.
Well, just like with hurricane shutters, in cybersecurity, there's good, better, best too. And from our perspective, in dealing with firms and helping them to start to put those minimum measures in place, we have our top three things. The three minimum things that should be in place at every firm. First of those is going to be a secure network. So whether it's that virtual firewall that I talked about in the beginning, or it's a physical network in your office, making sure that you've got the best practices applied in terms of how things are configured and managed and kept up to date. So it's going to be that network. It's going to be endpoint protection. So I talked about threat hunting. It goes a little farther than that, but at its simplest, having the endpoints managed and protected, like Deb, you were talking about, you provide company issued devices, and that really is the best practice. And then the next one is that user training. So making sure that cybersecurity awareness training and testing is in place. It's happening at least annually, preferably quarterly. It's 30 minutes out of our lives. It takes no time at all. And then having those simulated attacks hitting inboxes every couple of weeks. And the way that we do that through the platform that we use is we whitelist the domain that these phishing simulations come from, so that our tooling, our technology that's blocking all of the phishing attempts that are coming from actual bad actors, it doesn't block them. So that way we are letting safe bad things through and testing users' awareness of being able to recognize those and avoid them.
Right.
So I think we talked about MFA. I think that's table stakes. It should just be on everywhere, including LinkedIn. Just have it on. But outside of that, we're talking about secure networks. So making sure that the traffic is secure because everything is in the cloud, protecting the endpoints from malware and ransomware, and making sure our teams are trained. Those are our top three. Deb, do you have anything different on your list?
Oh, but the big thing is like one of the things that, I use QuickBooks Online and,
Yep.
2FA with that. So if a new user comes in, a lot of times they just share, they don't want to pay if they have more than 3 users, I make them go on Plus because they get 5 users. I say, we
Right.
do not share logins,
That's right.
and then if they start to talk about, you know, they're start to get bigger firms, I move them into advanced because advanced I can get extremely granular and much more security
Hmm.
with than just I don't want to say plain QBO, but because if I have more people accessing the file, now I can put silos into place
Right.
where different people won't see different pieces of the firm.
Right.
Because even in your firm, you could have. I just got a new client whose bookkeeper stole all the money. Had she not had access to the payroll account, she would have not been able to steal the payroll money. You know, so it's so you have to think like a bad guy, and it's not easy if you're a good guy. Um,
Right. Yeah.
so so I moved into QBO Advanced, and they'll say, I don't want to pay. Here's what it costs you if you don't do it, and the risk you run. And I talk about risk a lot because it is their money. I mean, this is why they're working to make money to build wealth so they can live the life they want. So it costs something, but the benefit is this. Everything has two sides to the coin. Going into the cloud and having something has been a real benefit. Work anywhere, anytime, any place.
Sure.
Flip side is you got to really watch. So,
Yeah, so I know we've been talking a good bit about firm security measures and best practices for firms, but as an accountant with clients, what conversations are you having? I know you're talking about multi-factor authentication. I know you're talking a little about email phishing scams. Do you talk about any other cybersecurity measures that small businesses should be
well,
considering?
I tell them pretty much the same thing we do in our firm. 2FA is critical,
Mhm.
separate usernames and passwords for everybody that logs in, silos of their business if they have bigger
Yeah.
businesses where, accounts payable just handles that, payroll just handles that. I said, this is not how it used to be. We really have to talk about, watch for phishing emails because, be careful of that. Make sure
Mhm.
that if they look weird or you get a hinky feeling in your stomach, trust your gut. I
Yeah.
always tell the owners, allow the people that are handling the money, if something seems weird, that they can come to you without fear or shame that they're asking you the question because really they're looking out for you. Don't put passwords on post-it notes on your monitors. Use a password protection protection thing.
Yep.
Don't have your password be password.
Right. Right.
Have a long password. And the easiest thing I tell them is make up a name. I said, what's your kid's name? Oh, Susie. My favorite kid is Susie. That can be your password. No one's going to guess that. So I teach them that all the time. I know it's a pain, but I tell you what, not doing it, you run the risk of losing your business. And then be careful. So I always teach them that stuff. And a lot of times, if they're smaller, I take baby steps with them. They because if you kind of throw it all at once, they go ah.
All
So
right.
baby
All right.
steps. Is 2FA turned on with your QuickBooks Online? I turned that off. Turn it back on. Make sure that one of the things they do is for authenticate, like especially with banks, if they hack your email, okay, and you on a bank says, "How do you want me to send you the code? Is email okay?" And you say yes, and if they've hacked your email,
Mhm.
they ask for the code. Now they can look at the code in the email and get in.
Right.
So our bank just changed this to email. I called them up and I gave him the what for. I go, email, really? I mean, I told him the story. I said, you should not allow an email authentication because if someone hacked my email, they could get the code and get in my bank. The banker said, I never thought of that. So don't allow email verification of the code. Have it be a phone number. Now, if they only have one phone number, you could get a Slack channel or something like that, paste it in or something like that, or somebody's in charge of that phone to get that code. Um, so that's a big deal. Or even a phone call. Who's going to get the phone call to get the code? Had to call a client yesterday. I need the code. He gave it to me.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. No multi-factor authentication is perfect, but any MFA is better than no MFA, I think is what you're saying. And then the other really important thing that I don't want to get lost is you were talking about QuickBooks Online Advanced and the roles that are able to be much more granular. I mean, you're talking about data governance, so it's governing who has access to what and how that
mhm.
data flows. And all of that is really important in today's day and age because it's not about trust. It's not about wanting to restrict someone from something. What it's actually doing, and I think the message we need to give to our teams is that we're restricting what you have access to, not because we don't trust you, but because if your account is compromised, we want to limit the impact of that
Right.
breach to the
Yeah.
smallest possible footprint.
Right.
So that's the intent. And intention is really important when we're talking about our team, talking about cybersecurity with our teams, so that they don't believe, because they can misconstrue it very easily and say, oh,
Yes.
well, Deb doesn't trust me. She doesn't want me to see everything in ABC company's books. And that's just not the case.
Right. Right. Because we have an obligation, I think, to protect our clients' data.
Yeah,
And because they trust us. I always tell clients when I meet them the first time, I'm going to ask you for a lot of stuff that everybody tells you not to do, like your bank logins and all of that stuff, and separate bank logins. Like a lot of the banks do it, some of them don't. Then I'm going to need this. You're going to get, we use Keeper that that has
yep,
2FA magic things, all of this stuff. It seems like a lot. But I'm out here to protect you to get your books in order because the worst thing that can happen is someone you lose money because it wasn't secure.
that's right.
And go, oh, okay. They really don't know. No one's taught them. Then, you know, they know. I don't. Some of them. I mean, I've had clients call up. Oh, I got a thing that my big thing came in. Your computer's hacked, and log into here, and I'll help you. Even I said they even call QuickBooks a lot of times. They want help with QuickBooks, and they Google it, and they click a number or call a number that's not actually into it.
Right.
And
Yep.
they into somebody called, oh, it's $900 to fix your computer. They just gave away the store. I said, so if you ever have a problem, call me first, and I'll tell you if you're actually calling into it, because chances are you aren't.
Well, I think that that's where, looking up the legitimate phone number, if there's ever a question, looking up the phone number and just verifying that the number is the right number. My wife had that with Apple, similar to what you were talking about. My grandmother had a piece of malware hit her machine, and it said call this number, call Microsoft at this number to get help. And next thing she knew, she was in a screen share, and they had her logging into her bank account, and then she's on the phone with the bank the next day saying, I think something was wrong here. And
Right,
they were able to freeze everything, but there was a transaction that was started. So
right.
Yeah, the whole trust but verify thing is just is so important, especially now. In AI, there was a question about AI. AI is really incredible. It's an incredible productivity tool. It's an incredible creativity tool, but it's also empowered this thing called ransomware as a service, malware as a service. So you've got global networks of people now that are using AI to do the coding for them, creating more frequent zero-day attacks than we've ever seen before. And all a zero-day attack is a attack that we've never seen before. So these new and unique attacks that keep coming that are keeping our cybersecurity tools on their toes. So AI is being used by the bad actors, and it only takes a few seconds of video. And with our lives being as social as they are, Deb, you're on YouTube all over the place, you know?
I know I got my YouTube channel, Bookkeepers on Fire. Please
Yep.
subscribe, like,
Yep.
subscribe, and share.
It doesn't take very much video content of you for AI to create a voice replica of you that can have a conversation.
I
And
know.
right. So it's really important to be vigilant now more than ever. And we don't have to spend a fortune to do it. There are some inexpensive things that can be done, both for our clients, for our firms, from the things we were talking about with the secure networks, the endpoint protection, the cybersecurity training. That's all low-hanging fruit in the cybersecurity world. It's more affordable than ever, especially with providers like Visory who can leverage economies of scale and get you that enterprise class technology, implement it, manage it for you. So all kinds of good that can be done there. So let's see, we've got a couple of slides left. I think I'm gonna skip a couple of these that we've definitely covered on. So top three
We've covered
security
it by
tools.
talking.
We touched on those. Yep. Um, let's see. Okay, yeah, this one's for you, Deb. For firms that still think cybersecurity isn't a priority, what's your message to them as someone who advises businesses every day?
Well, I just tell them, I said, just it's not gonna, it's not when it's gonna happen. It's not if it's gonna happen. It's when.
Yeah.
So you might as well, you're gonna lose. I mean, they're gonna come in. They're gonna find that you're the guy that doesn't have it done. So I just tell them that unless you're willing to use these security measures that we think to safeguard you, we don't want you as a client.
And what about for firms, your peers? When you have those conversations and they think, it's a 2026 initiative, it's not really a
Yeah,
priority
well,
right now.
I think the challenge becomes is we'll get to it next week. And you really have to set a deadline. We will do this now. Now,
Mm,
today you have to think about, because if you got attacked today, you would say, "Gee, I should have done this back when." What you don't want to do it once the horse has left the barn. Do it now. Do it before it happens. And I know it's a challenge to get it started, but take the time. It's like one of the most critical and important things you can do to protect your firm is to get this going and underway. And start small by just requiring the 2FA, training your team, the importance of it, getting secure silos of network segregation of your stuff, and then of course call Visory to help you along that. That's what you guys do, to help you along the way. Because, just like people hire us to help with their taxes, we hire a security firm to help us with the cybersecurity. But I would do it today before it's too late. I hate being the messenger of gloom and doom, but I don't want to worry about this stuff. That every email's coming in. I just want to be able to do my work and love it. So that's why I put it into place so it kind of runs by itself, and I'm just monitoring it.
right. Yeah. Yeah, and I'll share. We actually worked with a pretty big firm. They had a global footprint, offices in multiple countries, multiple states. I think right around 90 employees. So a relatively good sized firm that did not have managed detection and response. So that threat hunting that I was talking about on the endpoints, the software that looks for behavior patterns of malicious attacks and automatically identifies, quarantines, and remediates those and prevents the bad thing from happening. They came to us and we put 10 of their staff on managed detection and response. So that threat hunting, we put them on it as a trial. We pulled some reports a few weeks in, and it had identified three malware attacks that were stopped. One of which was a ransomware attack, and they immediately saw the ROI in investing in that software for the rest of the team, and we implemented it immediately. But yeah, I can't speak highly enough about the importance of threat hunting on endpoints, and for firms that do allow the bring your own device situations, you are going to have a challenge with getting your team to agree to installing management software on their machines, which is
Right,
really, I think, where it comes back to that best practice of you should be budgeting for and providing work laptops.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, just if you want a team, that's part of being growing a
right,
firm, that you, the kind of firm you envision having.
right.
That's what I always envisioned, having a firm like this. Well, it costs money, but that differentiates us from everybody else. You know, plus your team likes having working stuff. I mean, so if I get a new computer, so does everybody else.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, yes, it's an investment, but I guarantee that that investment pays for itself in reduced downtime, because those personal devices often are bloated with software that's not work related. They run slowly. They have their technology issues, and they spend time troubleshooting. So,
Right.
bring your own device solution, while it looks cheaper on the front end, often just isn't, when on the aggregate when you look at it on the whole. Okay, so I know we're coming up close on time. We do have this QR code, which I promise is a safe QR code. It's not like the QR codes that people weaponize that we talk about sometimes. So it's a safe
I never
QR
even
code.
thought of that. That give me something else to worry about.
Yeah. It's phishing, QR phishing. So yeah, it's a whole thing that started after COVID. Because remember, we were going to restaurants, nobody would give you paper or plastic menus
Yes.
anymore. You had a QR code. And so now everyone was desensitized to using QR codes, and now bad actors will weaponize QR codes. So just
Oh
something else to
gosh.
be worried about. This one's good though, promise. And it does take you to a checklist. I mentioned accountants love checklists. We know that. And it's a great way to just go through and do a quick assessment on where you stand against what best practice really is as it's defined by the FTC. So have a look at that. If you have questions, if you want to talk with us more, talk about your current situation, and get some tips on how things might be able to be improved, or if you wanted to talk with us about taking over some aspect of your managed services, your managed IT or your managed security, please do reach out to us here. Mandy or I will follow up. And we couldn't have Mandy here with us today, but she's just brilliant with this stuff. So we do hope to hear from you. Deb, thank you for being on. Can't thank
Oh,
you
my
enough.
pleasure.
This
My
was
pleasure.
just a hoot, a fun time.
Me too. I had a
Uh,
great time.
All right. Well, we'll follow up on any of the unanswered questions that we had left. I will follow up via email or schedule a call. Appreciate everybody joining. And Cindy, if you'll do us the honors of ending the show, we'll let everybody have a couple minutes to grab some coffee before their next meetings. Thanks, everyone.